So, without further ado, I think we're going to check and see if Dustin is ready. And one last thing. Oh, vote Park. Yeah. There he is. Hey, Dustin, how you going?
Good. How's it going?
It is going, my friend. Thank you so much for taking time. We had your buddy Wes on just now.
Yeah, I caught the tail end of it.
Just the part where he said the good things about you.
Yeah, the most important part.
There you go. Well, okay, so there was a comment here before. I'm going to scroll up and see who did it. Well, I'm not going to find it right now, but this is from Bryce. So Bryce, this is for you. Bryce asked before Wes left to play rock paper scissors. He put his money on Wes too. I didn't see that comment in time, so I blew it. But I'm hoping, can we start off by going rock paper scissors? We're gonna go rock paper scissors and then shoot, right?
All right.
Okay. Rock paper scissors, shoot. Oh, rock paper scissors, shoot. What'd you get? Ah. Were you gonna go scissors the whole time? Were you just gonna keep on throwing scissors?
I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, man. I'm the master of the reverse psychology on rock paper scissors. I can beat 8-year-olds all day at it.
I take offense to this, so I'm basically like I
wasn't making an analogy at all to
that. All right, well there we go. I am not smarter than an 8-year-old. We've established that. That's good. So Dustin, thank you so much for taking time. You and I were talking recently at Ride a Boom, and we know each other from further back than that.
We got to meet for the first time in person at Ride a Boom after 4 or 5 years.
I know. That was my first kind of like releasing Jonathan out into the wilds. It was awesome getting to meet everybody. But you've been an amazing figure in the community, the MSP world for a while. And it's one thing that, I mean, just seeing everybody here in the chat and everyone who's in our Discord and everything, it's something that I've really come to appreciate a lot, is how amazing this community is. And so thank you for taking time to come in and contribute. Give back to the community. You're really great at doing that, but I appreciate you doing that again here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull up. I got some very light slides. I don't have the cool Wes Spencer ones.
Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah, you're not going to have the all the Florida bashing, I imagine.
I can work that in.
You can probably work that in pretty quickly. Well, before you dive into this though, yeah, why don't you give me a little bit of background about yourself? Because I mean, you're not just at FifthWall. I think you're doing things at 3 different companies right now.
I am a little bit busy. So just kind of the important parts of background is I've been an MSP owner going back to 2011. Sold that MSP, then started my current one, Clear Guidance Partners. So started up 2019. We're at about 26 people right now. Really focused on law firms, and one of the big reasons on that was that nobody else wants to work with them, so it makes the sales a lot easy whenever they can't get the other MSPs to call them back. But really is going in, just getting in-depth vertical experience on it. And what happened was the cyber insurance stuff started coming up more and more, like 2020, 2021. And so it was starting to get frustrating as an MSP. So at one point, Jeremy Young at Blumira connected me with Reed at FifthWall. We really hit it off. I started helping him more and more with stuff, just nerding out on cyber insurance. And then these days, I spend 2 days a week working at FifthWall, both on the kind of tech security side. So whenever you guys have these apps you fill out and it says, do you have MFA? You're like, what the hell? And then you go back to the underwriter and you say, what does it mean? Do you have MFA? I'm the one that the underwriter turns around and goes to and says, Dustin, why is it, what are they asking? What do I need to tell them? That kind of thing. So helping in that area a lot, and then just kind of around the general technology side of things. So yeah, like you said, I'm a little bit busy most days.
Oh no, thank you for that. And yeah, we'll see in the chat. I mean, the law firms, I think they may be in the running. I find that like there are a few different verticals that everyone agrees like, oh no, but pretty much it's any vertical that someone works with a lot. They're like, oh no, that's the worst one.
Yeah. Dentists, car dealers, law firms, take your pick.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, super excited to have you on here. And I gave you a little bit, of hype and foreshadowing. But cyber insurance, obviously, for the reasons that you just talked about, and that others in the chat I'm sure are seeing too. Man, just becoming more and more of a thing that people are dealing with and changing all the time. And I feel like there's still a lot of mystique and vagueness around it. There's like shadow of war stuff going on a lot. You don't really know a lot about what's going on until you have to deal with it directly. And so really excited to bring you on here to shed a little light on things.
Yeah, and whenever you and I were talking originally, it was kind of like, okay, there's the application filling out, there's this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And where we ended up settling on was sort of on the, we always talk about right a boom, it's when an incident happens, not if. And there's a lot of good in-depth. There's around the IR side of things, right? This, that, and the other. But it's as an MSP, and I have some interesting firsthand experience on this from both sides of the house. So, but how do you actually navigate it? Like, what should you do? What shouldn't you do as part of, working through that claim with your client? So that was a unique that you and I came up with, where it's like nobody's really talking about that side of it. So
yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Your feeling around that too of there's a lot of best practice stuff, a lot of things that we see the same thing over and over again. What can we actually show that's going to be really new and interesting and actionable? So yeah, let's dive in.
All right. Do I have my screen shared out properly?
You do. Yeah, looks good
cool.
to me.
Okay. So a couple things that I wanted to sort of set the stage on. There's three big areas that I'm going to talk on, but the first one is I don't want to get into the right or wrong. Is there are a lot of problems in insurance. I'll be the first one to say that. I'm going to touch on some of those, but this isn't going to be a debate or a discussion on like, oh, they should do this differently, they should do that differently. It's like, this is the reality that you're dealing with today, right? Don't try to fight it. Go, here's how you navigate the flow, so to speak, right? These things, you are not going to win against these giant carriers trying to punch up as an MSP on a specific incident while you're in the heat of the moment. So as we're talking through that today, I'm definitely willing to talk about it in chat, offline, anytime. Come find me at conferences. I can talk about cyber insurance all day. But for today, it's like, look, guys, this is the way it works. Here's how you can make it work better for you. So that was one of the big things I wanted to set the table with. And then kind of going into, all right, left to boom. What do you need to do to be ready for when, not if that claim happens? And then right a boom, how do you actually work on the claim itself? What's your role as MSP? What should you do? What shouldn't you do? And then the last piece, and I'm hoping we'll have the time to get to it because this is really interesting, is I'm calling it the MSSP Threat. And I'm going to be mysterious and just leave it until we actually get to that slide.
Ooh, I like it.
I'm not going to explain it. Not yet. Okay, so this is one of my favorite slides, period. Just generally talking about insurance. So the anatomy of a claim, right? Let's just talk hypothetically. I am the best MSSP out there. I have top-notch security people. I can do all the technical parts of a claim, right? I can come in, I can get the attackers out, I can restore services, all that stuff. Awesome. That's only a fraction of what cyber insurance does. So taking the technology part off the table, the IT part, right? The MSP work that can be done in it, is what happens is whenever that breach occurs, the client or you picks up the phone, they call that claims hotline from insurance. The very first thing 99% of carriers do is, and again, I'm going to make a lot of law firm jokes today because that's both sides of my life, is they put a lawyer in charge. So that guy or gal is going to be our project manager. They're going to be the decision maker. Again, I'm not going to go to the right or wrong, but I have really strong feelings on if that's the right path in a lot of cases, right? Great. Somebody got scammed by gift cards. Like, do we really need a lawyer sitting here project managing it? That sounds expensive, but that's the way it works. That's how it's going to happen, right? So now we have this lawyer sitting at the top that's doing a kind of project management. We're going to engage IR. Great. They do their work. The attackers are out. We got services restored. But then the other part is, let's use medical offices are a really easy example. So this medical office just got breached. What actually was impacted, right? We saw Wes was talking about the fines and stuff that can happen because of that. So that's where the legal forensics comes in. They're going to bring in a team and they're going to look and say, well, geez, Jonathan, bad news. You got 100,000 patient records sitting here. We can't confirm or deny that the hackers accessed it. So bad news. You got to assume that they did. Now you have these regulatory fines. You have these notifications you need to do. All that stuff that's down the right side, right? So whenever you get those, somebody got breached again, great. I just got more free credit monitoring. Cyber insurance pays for that stuff. So this is all the parts that the MSP doesn't touch necessarily, right? You're not a lawyer. You're not a need discovery company. You probably don't want to be doing public relations for your clients. So this is all the other pieces that go into it, on top of the, kind of core incident response and technology. All right. So this is an interesting one. I'm going to refer to Violet as the Wes Spencer of cyber insurance conferences. You really can't go to a MSP conference without running into Wes, and Violet's kind of the same on the cyber insurance side of the house. She is a regular panelist, presenter, the whole 9 yards. So she actually works at a incident response firm, but she's also a privacy attorney, which is one of the terms that they use for the folks that deal with breaches, things like that. So I'm not going to go read that. But basically, one of the big concerns, and my next slide will have some more stuff on it too, is that around from the insurance industry is it's not just the actual companies that are, getting breached, the insureds being the term, but also on the MSP side, or even these companies without an MSP, they'll go bring in an incident response person, a breach coach, that kind of thing. That's a huge issue right now, to where some people do it right, a lot of people don't. So that's going to be you as the MSP going into it. For example, she sees a ton of MSPs where if you just kind of sit back, again, go with the flow, your client's going to be angry, right? They just had an incident. No matter how much you prepare them, they're always going to be mad. Let them be mad at insurance. You just kind of sit back. It's like, all right, we're going to follow the process, right? We had a great IR plan. This is part of the process. The problems that come up for MSPs in these claims are the ones that try to get too hands-on with things. And that was kind of I actually got this quote from her like 10 p.m. last night just for this presentation. Nice. But that was kind of the takeaway from this, right? Right or wrong, follow the process and you'll come out the other side in decent shape. Whenever you try to fight the process, whenever you try to go outside the process as an MSP, that's where you can have problems.
Well, and I mean, I think that brings up, what is the process, and making sure that everyone's clear on what that is so key. I mean, we've done quite a few sessions on incident response and working through this, and these are still questions that everyone has, and I think people handle it a little differently, but you'll hear, who is the first call you should make? Is it your attorney? Yep. Is it the insurance provider? And then when insurance gets in, they have their own IR teams they usually have approved, right? That they may come in, send in. And even in that case too, I mean, it's, the how you divvy up the responsibilities of who's doing what. Obviously not something you want to be trying to break down like in the heat of the moment, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to dive into that because one of the cool things is at my MSP last year, we went through a almost ransomware event, like they were in the network. That was my first opportunity as being on the, customer side of things, but knowing insurance, that I was able to kind of talk us through, okay, here's what we need to be doing, here's what we don't, knowing how the insurance side operated. So it was a neat, I don't want to say it was fun to go through, but it's like, if you have to go through something like that, this was kind of a best case scenario. So going back to, again, what I was just talking about, right? So here's two more pieces. Conference I'm at in a couple weeks. This is one of the sessions that I'm attending. As you can see, using off-panel vendors, failure to preserve evidence, blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about all that. And then I probably totally butchered this quote at the bottom, but back in November, I was at a conference and they had somebody that was up there talking about it. And she said, our law firm represents insurers whenever there's like a lawsuit or contentious something. And she said, this is the biggest problem that we're dealing with. So again, insurance, this is super on the radar. Okay, so what you were saying, how do we prepare? How do we have to do it? Left to boom. So what are we doing to prepare? Our client has cyber insurance at this point, right? I'm not even going to talk about here's how we get it, that kind of thing. But a couple of pieces you want to absolutely make sure to do. First is document the claim's contact info. Amazingly, there's some of them these days that have just an email address to where you'll email, like claims@travelers.com. That's weird, but it's normal. So don't be freaked out if you can't find a phone number to call. That's a process that some of them have. But you're going to want to have, and keep this on your network as MSP too. Don't just keep it on the client's network. Don't just keep a hard copy. One of the really interesting, just talking about, incident response and all that, was I was watching a panel the one time, and it was a bunch of businesses from Houston, and it was post-hurricane. And the one lady goes, man, this was awesome. The hurricane was coming. We were all super confident. We had done tabletops. We had, 4 binders for me, the COO, this, that, and the other. And then the hurricane hit, the floods came, the roads were shut down. We realized all the copies were in the office. So they couldn't, right? They couldn't get to it. So with the claims info, keep a copy on your network as the MSP. Don't just rely on the client having it. That's a good one to have. And you're going to look like the hero if the network goes down, oops, we don't have a paper copy. And you say, hey guys, we got it right here. That's part of our QBR process that we make sure we always have that stuff. You're going to want to have the policy number. And then another interesting piece is the named insured, right? You may have different company name in the back end versus what you know them as. So just make sure those three things. What's the claims contact info, policy number, and then the insured's name. Another one I'm not going to dig into. There is the ability to get pre-approved as a provider in certain cases. The issue currently right now is there's such a land rush on that. So I'll tell you on my MSP, we're on the smaller side, but not tiny. We got 26 people. I know the insurance industry. I made a couple efforts towards it and could not get my MSP pre-approved. That may say more about me than the insurance industry, but it's not an easy process. So you do see that come up a lot where it's like, oh yeah, just like call in, get approval for it. A lot of the carriers, it's not that they don't want to allow you to work with it, but they are so busy dealing with, think of how many calls you guys get from, hey, we can do incident response, we can be your partner, that kind of stuff, right? They're getting 10 times as many calls. I talked to the CTO at one of the biggest carriers the other day, and he said, Dustin, I'm like the king's taste tester these days for the boss. He said, I get so much snake oil that I have to sit there and check every day from these security vendors that are trying to sell me this, that, or the other. He's like, I can't take these calls half the time. So that may kind of change, but there is the ability to get pre-approved to do work on your clients. It's just not something that actually happens very often in reality. Not for most MSPs. If you're a 300-person MSSP, heck yeah, go for it. But somebody like us, on my MSP side, it's going to be hard to get them to talk to you. And then the last piece. So going back to, Jonathan, you said earlier about, are we bringing in a breach coach? Are we bringing in an IR firm? How are we doing it? Set clear expectations with the client ahead of time. And I'm going to go into some of what you do, or actually one thing you do want to do, and then everything else that you don't as part of it. That going into that IR with the client is, it's like, okay, we're going to do this, that, or the other. And the client may say, we're going to bring in a breach coach. Okay, cool. Up to you if you want to recommend, but just being clear on that, right? Because whenever it blows up, everybody's going to be panicking. You're all running around screaming, like chickens with your head cut off kind of thing. You need that process, even if it's short. We have a really brief IR template that we start with. It's 2 pages, and it's just who does what, right? Who makes legal decisions at the client. After 24 hours, it escalates to this person. Just really simple who and what kind of stuff. It's not, and we've used it before and it worked great because it was in the heat of the moment. There's that book. Have you read the Checklist Manifesto?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like one of the things on there was keep it short, keep it simple, right? You can't, if you have to go back to the lady with the binders of IR stuff.
Yeah.
That might work, but normally it's like your mid ransomware attack. You're not going to be able to sit there and, turn to chapter 17 and, subsection 3A. It's like, no, I just need quick. So.
Well, you did use the magic word, and that was template.
Yeah.
And Dave was asking if they could if you would mind sharing that template.
Yeah, I can get that out to everybody.
Oh man, you're the man. Thanks for asking, David. There you go. And then Tim.
Right, there you go. Tim may have better templates.
That's true. So Tim is coming up next.
I'll talk to Tim and we'll get everybody a great template.
There you go. Also, just a quick question from Adam up here. And great point, Adam. I mean, we got a lot of folks from EMEA and from other places too, where a lot of stuff may be different, right? I mean,
yep.
How much do you want to comment on that at all?
So I will say I have like the tiniest bit of experience outside the US, and it's mostly kind of third hand from, the industry. But I believe for what we're going to be talking about today, it's not substantially different.
Cool.
Yeah, it's on the front end, getting the policy, what the policy looks like. I don't know if Andy's on today. He came up to me, we met at DataCon, and he's like, yeah, I got this sweet 3-year cyber insurance policy. What are you talking about? Apparently in Canada, they'll give you multi-year policies. That is not ever a thing in the US. So there's my one concrete of front end cyber insurance outside of the US, I know.
Everyone's nicer in Canada,
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned before, if you guys want to see on my MSP, my business partner talks about the attack that we went through on Huntress's, I think it's like a testimonials page. We're front and center. I was joking, we're the poster child. We were the first MSP or company period to battle test their EDR. We were in I think we were actually in the alpha whenever it happened. And so a lot of this I mentioned before is like I'm going to be talking from the cyber insurance side, but also talking as an MSP because I've gone through since I started working in the cyber insurance world on our MSP side, we've had 2 claims that we've gone through also. So, all right. So right a boom. Remember I told you there's one thing we're going to do. So what insurance wants to see, the only thing insurance wants to see is you isolate and then you pick up the phone and call them. I guess that's 2 things, right? But so a couple different pieces on it is, oh geez, let's shut everything down, right? In a lot of cases, you just lost a ton of super useful logs. We talked earlier about that hypothetical medical office. I'm going to keep coming back to them. We have 100,000 medical records. Maybe there was some decent file system logging that was in there, that was showing what they got to, this, that, or the other. But we have really poor Windows event management setup. Great, we just rebooted. Now we just got spammed by startup logs, all that information. Great, we can't do anything on the forensic side. So that's why insurance really wants to see you just isolate. All these EDRs that are coming out with the functionality to be able to isolate those endpoints, that's what they absolutely love. So if you don't have something currently that can do that, 24/7 EDR, your Huntress's, Black Points, ConnectWise has their SOC, that kind of thing. I think SentinelOne even has one with that built in. That's the really hot control in insurance right now. And then a sub control under that they're starting to ask about is, do you have the ability to isolate those endpoints? And they're getting a little bit smarter. And one of the things was, if you use a third party, do they have the ability to isolate, right? That it's not relying on them calling your MSP at 2 in the morning and saying, hey, can you isolate these endpoints? So that's really all insurance wants to see. Don't touch another thing. Isolate whatever's under attack, and then pick up the phone and open a claim. So let's walk through what happens on that, right? So I'm going to use our first-hand example on that. Is we got a call from Huntress, and they said, hey, somebody's in your network. They actually had breached the IT admin. And so at that point, they were moving laterally. They were deleting shadow copies off of several servers. And so Huntress actually said, you know what, you guys are pretty screwed. Like, we're just going to hit the big red button and isolate you. And so at that point, all the workstations, all the servers, everything's locked down, knocked offline. And then we opened a claim. Insurance was excited. They're like, great, this is exactly where we want it to be. We're going to go ahead. Here's your attorney. So the first thing they do is they bring in a law firm, right? We talk through everything. Here's what's going on. The attorney goes, all right, I'm going to bring in, our IR team. We got to get you guys back online. I'm not going to name names on any of this stuff because I'm going to have good things and bad things to say about various groups. But the IR group that they brought in goes, okay, guys. So at this point, what we want to do is we use SentinelOne here. So we need to get SentinelOne on all these workstations, and we're going to bring it back online, and we're going to find the attackers. So as an MSP, I just mentioned, like we said, Huntress saw stuff already, right? What are we going to do? We are going to advise the client. So I picked up the phone and I said, hey, Mr. CFO, just a heads up, our buddies at Huntress, we know that they're on like 3 workstations and a server. So we know they're at least in one spot. What I'd like to recommend that you do is we can get the data over to the IR team. And at that point, they can, start with those. If we turn everything back on, I think that's a bad idea. But it's not me going to insurance and saying that. I said to the client, hey, I can give you a little bit of a write-up. I'd really recommend you do this. So at that point, the client, because remember, who's that contract between for insurance, right? The client and the insurance company. I'm not involved. I'm kind of a third party at that point. So they go back to the IR people and said, yeah, let's go. Look, we got this data. Can we just bring these ones back online? And the IR guys go, no, we do this for a living, Jonathan. We got this. So the client calls back and says, they got it. Are you sure? And I said, no, we have the data. Mr. CFO, think about it this way for a minute, right? We know it's on these 4. Just ask them, can we just do these 4 to start? And so then he goes to the attorney and says, hey, I'd really like to do this. And she goes, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let me see what I can do. Because remember, she's the project manager, right? She's the one saying go, no go, what should they do, that kind of thing. And so at that point, the attorney goes back to them and said, okay, we need to focus on these endpoints. We need to bring these ones back online. But again, I'm advising, I'm providing the information, and then just kind of sitting back and, right, the attorneys represent the insurance company, and then the client's talking to the attorney. So that's really where that key piece of communication goes.
So, sorry, just to jump back a little bit and clarify. So these discussions are happening, not all together. You've got basically you talking to client talking to attorney. The IR provider is talking to the client or to you. Who's the IR?
The IR provider is talking to the attorney most of the time.
Okay, got it.
You'll occasionally get big blasts of emails to everybody, but there's also a lot of one-on-one conversation. It's like telephone, right?
Yeah,
or email
totally.
chain going between. So again,
Wow.
I said, right or wrong, this is the reality. There's definitely some things really broken about the process.
And then timing wise too, I mean, you always hear that, of course, these things tend to happen on Saturday or 2 a.m. on Sunday, Monday morning or whatever. I mean, you're waiting for people how quickly were when this was first happening with Huntress, contacting you, how quickly is all this taking place? Is this just within 1 day? Is it pretty quick or is it a couple days? What
it was in this case, it was conveniently our speculation was the hackers had their time zones wrong because we got hit at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. So it's okay, again, silver linings. That's kind of nice. But no, we had insurance was spun up later that day. So I think it was kind of late afternoon that they started getting the ball rolling. And then the IR team actually worked overnight to sort of verify everything. I think we were going until about 11 that night. They said, okay, let's put a pause on it. And then we were up early the next morning. It was about 24 hours total from the moment Huntress hit the big red button to where we got an all clear. One of the things that was nice on that was that we didn't manage to Huntress, right? Managed to stop the attackers before they deployed any payload. So it was a little bit easier. But the client was back up and running. But at that point, earlier I mentioned, right, the legal forensics. So then it was, okay, let's dig in. Let's see what they got. We know they're out of the network, but what did they actually get to? And that just even on a simple business email compromise, right, say one mailbox, that could take a couple weeks. Sifting through that data, depending on how much there is. So the initial attack response goes pretty quickly. It's that tail end stuff. And one of the pieces on it is, so this is, a good example of where things go. I said my slides had no substance, but it's a lot of, okay, we need to get on a call real quick and the attorney's going to talk about it. For Cynthia's question real quick that I just saw, it was one of my MSP's clients, and my MSP uses Huntress, so they're the ones that caught the attack. The client's in-house IT admin downloaded something she shouldn't have onto her computer. And had also given herself domain admin at some point that we didn't catch. We now have better monitoring for that. It was a fun, it makes for a good story now in hindsight. But so there's going to be a lot of stuff, right? You open that claim, it is going to be sometimes hours before you get a call back. Then at that point, great, we got our attorney in place. Jonathan, let's sit down. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to be, the claims attorney for this process, blah, blah, blah. We'll be contacting you within 2 hours with an incident response firm to take care of this. So then you're, again, just twiddle, 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 right? And then lots of project update meetings, things like that, lots of emails. So, okay, we got our IR firm in, we just restored everything. And now the next piece that we're going to do is we're going to dive into that kind of e-discovery piece, what is everything liable for? And so they're going to be asking for a lot of logs. So sometimes you'll see that you're asked to pull the logs, that they're going to say, hey, can you guys go do this? Other times they're going to be asking for them to go, can you please give us a global admin to 365 so we can go pull some logs? This is another one to where, from the client standpoint, if you want to advise them and say, hey, this is something that we could easily do for you, you definitely can. There's some things on the IR side where it's like, why are you guys doing that? That'll take us 2 minutes. By the time we explain everything to you, we could have had it done, that sort of thing. But again, go through your client, right? Get things in writing. Don't go and make decisions on your own, right? This sounds incredibly dumb, but in that case, if IR says, hey, we need 365 logs, Jonathan, don't go and pull them and just say, here we go. say, I'd like to go pull these. I'm going to go do X, Y, Z, right? You just want to be very black and white, because going back to like Violet's quote, all the panels is the whatever they call it, the spoliation of evidence and stuff. You want to make sure that it's very documented of, yes, we are doing that. Here's how we're doing it, things like that, right? Over communicate, pretend it's the least tech savvy client in the world, right? We're going to spell everything, explain it like I'm 5. We're going to really spell this stuff out for you. So that all makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, you had me thinking with some past sessions we've done, and just talking with incident response providers, like from Trusted Sec specifically. That's been one of the main things is oh man, if it would make their lives so much easier and better if everyone would just enable the logging that they should have. And so that naturally led me like, okay, well, what should people be logging? So I've got a couple of links that I'm going to drop in the chat here. And there's some other resources, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a whole nother kind of topic there.
Yeah, and that gets into those regulatory fines.
Right.
Let's take our actually, I'll use another example that I got to see was a mailbox got breached for an executive assistant, and there wasn't enough logging. So they weren't able to say what was accessed. Okay, that's not great. We have to assume everything is breached, right? All that data was accessed, possibly downloaded. She had shared access to 3 of the executives of the company as well. So now suddenly, because we didn't have exchange logging turned on properly, 4 mailboxes, 3 of them being the most high value ones in the company, just, we have to assume breach on those because there wasn't enough logging to say otherwise. I keep getting a pop-up for hand raises. Do we need to be grabbing this?
That's a good point here. Okay, yeah. Oh man, lots of hand raises. You're right. Or maybe people are just doing that now. Yeah, Brett. Yeah, Brett and Diego. I mean, if you guys have questions here, and Thomas, anyone, just drop them in here. We'll drop them in the chat, please. Or also there is the Q&A, which folks can use. But yeah, yeah. Let's keep going forward.
All right. So we are now moving on to, we've got the incident relatively cleaned up. We're kind of doing our follow through, just making sure, putting a bow on everything. Okay, we think we know it's this. It's moving a little out of the IT realm at this point, right? We know what data was accessed or, exfiltrated, that kind of thing. At that point, the attorneys, the notifications, all that stuff is taken over. We as the MSP are starting to step back a little bit. So this is an interesting transformation in the industry, is that what you guys need to be aware of is as you move into the second phase, you need to be on the defensive. And the reason for that, if my slides go, the MSSP threat. So if you look at, here's just a couple examples of what's going on in the cyber insurance industry. You'll see ones that are have policies that include like post-breach hardening and things like that. I forget the actual coverage terms, but they are starting to realize that there's money to be made. They think, again, we're not talking right or wrong today, but they think they're smarter and can do security better. And so there's getting to be a little bit of a marriage of sorts happening, a blend of what we do as MSPs, as MSSPs, as security first MSPs, combining with insurance. So Alpha Secure is one of the most prominent ones because they just took the idea and ran with it. They actually bundle the full MSSP service as part of the policy. It is not like an optional add-on thing. It is, if you get a policy that we're going to roll out this endpoint agent everywhere, they do MFA, it has a VPN option, there's EDR, and it's backing them up. So what you can run into, I say you need to be on the defensive, is at the end of this incident, regardless of how much we prepared the client, breaches are going to happen. It's when, not if. All these sayings that we have, everything that we just coach the hell out of these clients to be ready, this is how it works. They're going to be, even in the very slightest, they're going to be upset with you, right? So at that point, there is a, call it 50% chance that insurance is going to want to sit down and talk through security. And there's going to be somebody sitting across the table there that's, maybe not a direct competitor to you, but that wants part of your client's business. So be aware of this. And I'm going to say, fortunately, on my MSP for that breach that we talked about, was they called a project update meeting, like literally the 24 hours after the client was back online, and blindsided the CFO with a sales pitch that just sent him off the edge. So he's like, "What the hell are you guys doing? Like, you still haven't even cleaned this up, and you're pitching me, sir, we have this 24/7 SOC that would be monitoring your endpoints." Like, yeah, guys, that was Huntress. Like, they just saved our asses. It was great.
Yep. Yep.
But that kind of thing is coming up, more and more. Cyber insurance is moving more and more into doing, formal security. So just as an MSP, whenever you're, on the tail end of these breaches, be aware there's a good chance that these kind of conversations are going to come up. You're seeing it on the front end probably of, hey, we can bring in, Jonathan, did you know Symantec still has like a security consulting division? I found that out the other day. Didn't know. One of the insurers is working with them and said, as part of your policy, you get 2 hours of consulting with the Symantec security engineer.
Symantec is one of those. I hear that I see like the Obi-Wan. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah.
Thing going on.
That was my first thought. I was like, cool. They could set up my backup exec. Like, it'll be great. But yeah, so this is one of those things to where they're starting to provide these security services as well. So they're going to present it on the front end as well, which is part of the reason. Just our whole pitch with FifthWall, you want to be involved in the process. You don't want them saying, "Hey, I got this great alpha secure policy, Jonathan. We need to install all this stuff." You're like, "I already do all this for you, right?" Well, insurance said we need it.
Yeah. I mean, well, and the fact that they have that relation, you're going against your relationship and your established trust versus this other authority you now, right? I mean, as an MSP, if you put your MSP hat back on, I mean, what should folks be doing? What are some recommendations to, get ahead of this?
So the biggest thing is getting ahead of it. If you have that conversation first, because remember, I'll say, I hope there's no insurance agents on here. The insurance agents don't know what they're doing when it comes to the security side. The carriers, debatable, but the agents, 99.9% of them don't know what they're doing. So whenever you go in, you talk to your client about the insurance side of it. Hey, I know what good security looks like. I know what the claims process looks like. We've discussed this. Then whenever the agent comes to that client and says, hey, like, I want to do this alpha secure, they go, "Oh yeah, Jonathan, my MSP was talking to me about insurance the other day. Like, let me grab him for this conversation," right? You got to establish yourself as the authority first. Same thing on the claim side, to where you're like, "Okay, guys, hey, Mr. Client, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to be your right-hand man. I'm going to advise you through the situation, but we got to, sit back. We got to let insurance do their thing. But I want to make sure, I'm going to talk you through. We're going to respect this, that, and the other." Then again, you're their trusted advisor at that point, right? They're going through everything. They're like, "Oh yeah, the attorney came in just like Jonathan told me. The incident response people came in just like Jonathan told me. Oh, he really saved us from, spinning this stuff back up," right? You're just in their ear, just telling them, "Here's how it's going to go. Here's how it's going to go." And it's so black and white on insurance. That's the nice thing. Like, you talk about as an MSP going into like a sales meeting, God knows what's going to happen, right? The client could just be like, "Yep, sign me up. Like, do it right here. I need 6 months to decide." Like, who knows? The insurance process is very defined. It's very repeatable. It's the same every time. So that makes it very easy. Like, now your client's like, "All right, that guy knows what he's talking about," because it went exactly like you said. There's not much deviation from that process. And so then whenever the MSSP side does come into it, that they're like, "Oh yeah, like Jonathan told me about this. He said our EDR worked excellent. It stopped the attack. We have good backups. We were able to restore. Like, I don't know why I would need any of this. Our process worked. Thank you very much." Right? It's almost validating things at that point.
Absolutely. I mean, it takes the kind of changes the perception too of, okay, this was a failure of some kind, which, okay, yeah, there's lessons to be learned. Maybe there was a mistake made by a user or what have you, but I mean, you anticipate that. I mean, that's the name of the game, right? And you have your processes. To your point, like, our process worked. Here it is. Right. We weren't scrambling. Like, we figured it out. We dealt with it, and this was a win, actually.
We'd rather it hadn't have happened in the first place, but that's part of what we prepare for as your MSP, right? We know these incidents are going to happen. That's why we spend all this time on this IR stuff. That's why you have to write these huge checks to cyber insurance. Why we need the 24/7 EDR, why we test your backups, that kind of stuff. It's a validation of it. And then talking to, just like on the MSP side, is I've had people make fun of me for, like, we went up there and did the video with Huntress on it, that kind of almost celebrating that happens. I use it as a tool. I seriously will go into, I still do some sales stuff for my MSP. I'll go in and actually talk about it. And it'll be like, okay, Jonathan, I'd really like to work with your law firm. Let me tell you a story about, you guys have probably some good security right now. Your stuff's mostly working. But the problem is, what happens whenever the breach comes? They go, well, we haven't had one. I said, yeah, statistically, you're going to. Let me walk you through a breach that one of my clients had last year and how we were able to quickly contain it, quickly recover. And they were down for less than 24 hours. Did you know, the average downtime is 16 days, I think I saw in Wes's one. I can't remember. It always changes. But, it's take that and turn it into a win. You guys probably, a lot of, Robert Chiaffi talks about, his MSP being attacked, but it's like you come out so much more resilient from that. You're able to almost turn it into an advantage in a lot of ways. So the shame side of it, it's like, that's 4 years ago. Move past that.
Yeah, great points. And we have a question from Scott here, asking about from the IT end. Obviously, we talk a lot about MSPs, but there's IT folks on the call here too. And
okay, yeah. So like a in-house IT team. Kind of follow the same process that I talked about. So functionally, for an insurance claim, you are the MSP as far as today's discussion goes. So again, follow the process. You're probably going to have somebody, I would hope, as IT, they're not just dumping the whole claim on you and saying, hey, Scott, go run with this. So you're probably gonna have like a CFO or something sitting there with you, but same kind of thing. Push back, but do it through the right channels whenever you see something that needs to deviate. Good news for you is the MSSP threat at that point. You're the decision maker. You're the one they're trying to sell to, so you can just say no thanks. It's not really that same competition threat that the MSP has. But no, kind of the same process applies, right? Is you're going to sit back, you got to let them drive. Isolate to start. And one of the biggest problems that I've seen before is, and really not even like IT versus MSP, just across the board is, oh, great, we're going to restore backups from 3 days ago. And, cool, it's up. Oh, whoops, the attacker was already in. So now you just made life infinitely more complicated, not only for your business and you, but also the claim side of it. So that's why they say isolate, because they're going to go in. That's something that these IR teams always know to check. It's like, when did the attackers get in, right? We're not just going straight to restoring backups. I know that's a lot of people's inclination is like, oh yeah, we can just roll, like, we got badass backups, we're just going to roll back. I have seen firsthand so many horror stories on that where suddenly you're re-encrypted and it hurts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it even came up before. I mean, in the anecdote of had access for 30 days. Peyton has a question here about isolation. And the scope of that. And I mean, I guess at this point in your example, maybe we just stick to that one. Huntress had basically identified, here's the devices that they've seen, right? Like you mentioned, there's 3 things, but was it limited to that, or did you guys go wider?
We ended up isolating the whole thing. And I feel like on that kind of thing where it's an attack, at least until you have a grip. This is one of those areas, like, I'm not an IR expert, I'm not a security expert. But I'll say from like almost a common sense standpoint, you don't know what the hell's going on. Right. Like, just isolate all of it to start. Maybe you start pulling that back a little bit as people dig in. It's like, oh great, they didn't get it into the accounting server, like we can bring that back online. But I would just kind of take a nuke to it to start and isolate every single thing. Because God forbid, they are in something that you didn't isolate because you didn't realize it, and now suddenly the attack continues. But that's Dustin's personal opinion. I don't have really kind of industry guidance on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're getting some other questions here. I mean, it is I think that contributing to that downtime from a breach. I mean, this is a big element of it, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. And so exactly. It's not just that like attackers have like deployed ransomware to a couple of machines. It's that everything has to come down because you don't know what the extent of it is, right? And then it takes time to bring everything back up. Matt
Yeah,
has a question.
real
Oh,
quick
go
before
ahead.
we go
Yeah.
to that one, it was I think wasn't it at Right a Boom that somebody's talking about reducing the blast radius?
Yes.
What was that was from some conference, yeah. So same kind of concept, right? Is you don't know what that blast radius is, so let's isolate everything and reduce the amount of damage. Because like in our case, if we would have pushed back on Huntress and said, like, oh, it's fine, like we know we had some other alerts on opera, like we know it's on these three, and then that attack continues, that would have gone from a 24 hours downtime to, oh man, they just got ransomed for the entire business, right? If we didn't know what all it was on. So
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a question from Matt. He's asking, and I'm assuming, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming you're asking about Dustin's this one specific experience, but he asked, what digital business ops are still possible versus 100% altered while waiting at the beginning of the process. And to me, I mean, again, maybe I'm getting this question wrong, but it just seems like, well, this is part of the planning stage of going through the scenarios in your mind. We've been talking about tabletops. We've been talking about having conversations proactively, being able to understand, okay, if we do need to shut down the network, let's really make this very real. What exactly is going to be impacted, and knowing what's business critical so you can prioritize in terms of recovery, your recovery plan and all that. I mean, Dustin, is that sound right to you or anything you want to add?
And that kind of goes into that, have the conversations, because to Matt's point, it's like, okay, you could leave part of it. Say you have an endpoint compromise. Okay, at that point, are we going to leave 365 going? I don't know. Were they able to do credential harvesting from that endpoint, and they can now, move into 365? That's the stuff that I'm not an IR expert. It's way over my head. But as you're talking to the client doing that IR, our general discussion is whenever something does happen, is we are full stop. We are shutting down, locking down every single thing we can get our hands on. And then we're going to kind of go from there, right? That we don't ever, and this is more of my business partner, Anthony, who's our CISO, but it's like, we're going to shut it down. We don't know. We know an attack happened. I don't think very often that anybody realizes mid-attack of here's exactly what's going on, right? There's always unknowns. There's always known unknowns. There's always unknown unknowns. So my thing would just be like, slap that big red button and at least give yourself a minute to breathe, take a step back, assess where where are they in, where's the damage, that kind of stuff. I don't love the idea of, oh, it's only on this area, like let's keep the rest of it going. But again, from the insurance side, there's not a hard and fast guidance. There's going back to making fun of insurance, do you have an IR plan? Like, yeah, panic, check yes, great.
Dustin, man, thank you so much. We can talk all day about this, right? But we've got Tim coming up. I want to be mindful of his time, but we do have one last question from Scott, and this kind of tees into what I was going to ask you too. He's asking, do you have any suggestions on cyber insurance checklists to help with the IR planning? Kind of going back to, templates, checklists, any other resources you want to point people to?
Yeah, so on the IR checklist, we don't have anything currently, but I can also get with Tim and we can put some stuff together on that.
Cool.
One other thing that was super useful, and this will be my one shameless plug, I think I've said FifthWall once the entire presentation, is we're a bunch of nerds. So we created Lord of the Apps, LODA, and it is across 43 different carriers. We distilled it down to, I think it's about 38 questions right now. John Wicker's going to kill me for not remembering that. But it is here are the current most important 38 things that you need to do, where it's like, if you have the answers for these, and you don't have to say yes to all of them either, that's the thing. But it's like, if you map against LODA, no matter what app lands on your lap, is going to be, you're going to be ready to fill the vast majority of it out.
Oh man, I'm trying to go over to LODA right now. Then this is, I have to enter in something. Is that like
So the catch on it, and Joseph just asked, how can we access LODA?
Yeah.
You do have to sit through a 30-minute. This is the easiest partner program. Remember, I've been an MSP forever, so I don't want ridiculous partner programs. Free to sign up. You just have to sign a lightweight NDA. 30 minutes, what we call Cyber Insurance 101. That's we do a weekly group onboarding. And then at that point, you have access to it. So very low bar to clear on that. And then you get our newsletter at that point. So you can even unsubscribe if you want.
Cool. All right. Oh man, thank you so much, sir. This is fantastic. Thank you for kind of lifting the veil on a lot of this stuff and really giving some awesome real world insights into it. Really appreciate it. So much more, like, as with any good presentation, so many more questions being raised and everything. We'll definitely have to do follow-up stuff.
Yeah,
But
I'll drop my
yeah,
email in the chat. I think I actually just did a second ago. You guys are
nice.
welcome to feel free to reach out. I love talking to people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dustin.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. So we're going to keep it rolling here. Although I did see some people asking for bio breaks and stuff. We're, in the interest of time, going to keep rolling through it because we did run a little bit late there with getting started. But this is being recorded. So we will absolutely get you, if you got to run away for a little bit, worry not. Come back when you can. But you should definitely, those who can, stick around because we have a great presenter coming right up.